Welcome to the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Mike DeHaan and Dan Austin. From wins, losses, horror stories, and tactics for optimizing your business, Mike and Dan take a real, uncensored deep dive into the ins and outs of running a full-time real estate investment and wholesaling business.
What's going on, guys? On this episode of the Collecting Keys podcast, we have Kurt Burchert, who is the self-proclaimed accumulator of crockpot wealth, but he is not a 75-year-old man who bought a bunch of land by the freeway and then it happened to get sold out, which I feel like is, well, you know, that's like what they typically say about real estate is, you know, if you want to make $1 million, buy something 50 years ago. But, you know, you figured out how to do it and were able to retire by the time that you were 35, and you've been a career-long real estate investor, right? So I think kind of where you're at is where all younger people and millennials kind of want to be, and where a lot of older people wish they had been. So Kurt, welcome to the podcast. We'd love to hear your backstory and how you were able to do so much in, you know, relatively early part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When did you, before you start, how old were you? So 20 years. So did you start investing in real estate when you were 20? And I'll let you dive into your story, but that's kind of no.
No. So I'm 45. I bought my first property.
Oh, okay.
Right,
okay. So
I was either 25 or 26. So
okay.
Yeah.
So
right about 20 years.
So that's even, you know, before things got weird too. Cause I feel like it's really hard to find real estate investors these days, this is us included, that have been around since before the crash. I think most people after the 2008 crash, they either lost their stomach for it, moved on to something else, or they kind of like lost everything and then
never came
back into it in like 2015. Right. So I guess what's your kind of background? You started investing back then. What's your strategy always sort of been, and, you know, how have you built that into a business?
Yeah, so a little bit of background. I grew up in New Orleans. I went to LSU, which is in Baton Rouge. It's about an hour and a half from New Orleans. Studied finance, minored in real estate and commercial banking. And out of college, I became a financial advisor, and then I also eventually became a CFP, a certified financial planner. I was in the financial services business for about 7 years. Towards the middle and end of that, I started buying properties, started buying duplexes. When 2005, when Hurricane Katrina hit 2005, I owned 2 duplexes, and I had my company had relocated me from New Orleans to Dallas. So I lived in Dallas for a year. Kind of felt guilty about leaving New Orleans, and I also I got an entrepreneur bug in me, and I really wanted to move back and start a business, and I didn't know what to do. So I figured there'd be a lot of money made in construction because of the rebuilding boom that was about to happen. So I ended up starting a spray foam insulation business. So I moved back to New Orleans. I did that. It almost failed in the first 90 days, but we were able to turn it around and made some good money doing that. We insulated about 3,000 homes in New Orleans over the course of like 6 or 7 years. All of the profits that I was taking from that business, I was buying real estate. So New Orleans is a big duplex town. I think it has highest per capita amount of duplexes in the country, of any city in the country. New Orleans, we called them doubles. So I was buying duplexes as I had the spray foam business. And then about 5 or 6 years in, I started getting really stressed out with that business. It was just balls to the wall for a long period of time. So one day I just decided, I'm totally done with this. I was driving around and my heart started beating like crazy and thought I was having a heart attack. I was like, I am done with this business. I'm like, I need to do something easier. So I ended up selling that business, kind of gave it away, didn't really sell it for too much money. And then, I got married right after that, and my wife and I took a year off. So I said, I'm done. You know, so I basically retired, did an early retirement, and we took a year off. We traveled around the world. I was still managing my properties from different countries around the world, and then came back. We started having kids, and just started being a real estate investor ever since then. So age 35 is when I really stopped, running a business and having any type of W-2 job. And I've just been a real estate investor ever since. So I decide how much I work. I live by the beach now in Florida, moved here a couple of years ago. And some days I don't work at all. Some days I work a lot, depending on the weather, depending on the beach, and depending on what my kids are up to.
Sweet.
That is awesome.
So when you
just trying to live the
when
life
you sold
now.
that business and traveled, how old were you at that point?
So I sold it in 2011. So that was I was
nice.
What,
so that was right before I guess you crossed that financially free threshold. So you were pretty much there when you were traveling. Yeah.
I had low expenses back then, so I didn't have any kids. I wasn't married yet, so my expenses were really low. So I was financially free.
Do you remember what your portfolio looked
in my
like
early
at that
30s? At that point, I think I had about I think I had 18 units. So it was like 9 doubles. And it was low leverage. So a couple of them were paid off. So I was making a lot of positive cash flow, and
that's awesome.
I didn't need to work anymore. Then I got married, and I started having kids. My expenses rose a lot.
That's fascinating. I want to go step back a little bit and talk more about the entrepreneurship for a second, because it's interesting that spray foam became your thing. So I want to know how you picked that one, because I think that's an interesting story for those that, just like Mike and I, we always spitball about businesses and stuff like that. Like, so how did you select spray foam, and then fast forward to what was so stressful about it that you needed to sell it and get out of it?
So I at one point, I think it was 2004-ish, I did a full gut renovation on a triplex in New Orleans. And my contractor at the time was like, we were about to insulate it. And I was like, well, what should we do for insulation? He's like, well, have you ever tried spray foam? And I was like, no, never heard of it. He showed me what it was and told me kind of the ins and outs of it. I was like, well, that sounds awesome. So we got it done. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. It worked so well. It was like the best insulation ever. The tenants' utility bills were super low. We got to buy like a smaller air conditioning unit for the house. And so I kind of had that in the back of my head when I was thinking about businesses to start after Katrina. And that's how it popped in. And I use it to this day. I mean, every single project I do, I spray foam every single house that I build for myself or for my tenants.
Yeah.
And,
wow. That's awesome. I mean, it's just such a novelty in the sense of that. It wasn't anything complex. It doesn't sound like. You liked the product, and you're like, I need something to sell at this point in time, because you knew there's a construction boom, which also is incredible that you survived through Katrina, through crash of 2008 and all these things. So that's pretty incredible too, as a side note. But and then so what about it? Was it just the crazy busyness of it? What was were their margins too thin for you? What was the problem with it when you wanted to sell it? What pushed you to that limit?
So the problem with, just like a lot of businesses, you have employees, you have crews, guys that do construction work, or sometimes they're pretty shady, and so you got to watch them like a hawk. So you have to deal with them. They, sometimes they try to cut corners, get off the job early, and you got to check on everything. Yeah. And then also just having all the, a lot of customers, dealing with customers. I liked it overall. Just about 5 or 6 years in, I was just kind of mentally drained. I was probably doing too much myself. I was doing the bookkeeping. I was doing a lot of the estimates myself. Had to go check on the jobs myself. I probably could have hired somebody to run it, but it was hard for me to relinquish control. So I was like, I just got to kind of get rid of this business and be free of it. I knew I wanted to be a real estate investor full time in the future. So by the time I figured I was financially free, I was just like, I'm done. And I was getting married. We wanted to take a year off. I was like, this is the perfect time. Let's do it now.
Awesome. I love it. That makes sense.
I cut the
that boring business sort of MO is coming back, becoming more and more popular. I think there was this period of time, especially through like the early 2000s, through like even the last few years, where everyone who wanted to get into business, they're like, I need like the next greatest thing.
Yeah.
but you're proving, you can make good money just
Right.
doing spray foam, right? Like, we've talked about like all sorts of random ideas. Like what if you had a professional like door hanging business? That was one that got thrown around Instagram, right? Or if you're installing
Totally.
decks. Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's tons of money in blue collar businesses. A lot of blue collar businesses, they're good at doing what they do, but they don't know how to run a business. So if you can bring my MO is bringing a white collar business model to a blue collar business, and it worked very well. Most of my competition, they were very unorganized. They were a mess. They just couldn't get things done. And, most of the time we were able to charge a little bit of a premium and a price just because, we got the job done well and we were timely. We showed up when we said we were going to show up. We contacted the customers. We took credit cards. So we were just easy to deal with compared to our competitors. And there's a lot of opportunity out there still in air conditioning business, plumbing, like electrical. There's all types of opportunity out there if you're willing to. So I think a lot of Americans are kind of, especially younger Americans, are it's kind of a snooty thing. They look down on blue collar businesses, but there's a lot of money in those businesses and those services.
Yeah,
you'll always need those services.
I remember being in high school, and there was, they're trying to get everyone to go to college, like 2008, 2009, and there was one kid that was going to go and be a plumber. And I remember people made fun of him.
That dude is laughing to the bank
all day.
$250 an hour.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. It opened my eyes. When I was a financial advisor, I had a client that he was like 25 years old, and he owned a plumbing company.
Yeah.
And he was just killing it. And I had no idea that was, I just assumed plumbers made like $20,000 or $30,000 a year. I had no idea how much money you can make as a plumber when you own the business.
Yep.
And that really opened my eyes
awesome.
to some things.
That's very cool. So awesome. So I guess you came back from your trip, you pretty much retired at that point, and you became a professional investor as you said it. So I guess what has that look like for you to be a professional investor at that point? Like, I guess in the last 10 years, are you like flipping houses? Are you burying houses, adding value? Are you doing new builds? There's so many different ways that, people do that. So what's your MO?
Yeah. So like a lot of people, I tried a bunch of different things. We did flips. We did wholetailing, where we bought from wholesalers and then put it on the MLS and made a profit off of that. I've done spec houses. I've done short-term rentals. I've done, BRRRRs with duplexes and buy and hold and just keep those as rental. And I've kind of come to the conclusion, my two main things, which I love doing and I've been concentrating on. I like Airbnb and I like buy and hold long-term rentals with mostly duplexes. I try to stay away from single family housing. It could work for some people. It's just not my cup of tea. So those are the two things I do now. So long-term buy and hold duplexes, and then short-term rental. And a lot of the duplexes that we've done, we've actually built. So we build them, build them very nice, well-made, well-constructed, spray foam, so their utility bills are low. And we're able to charge a premium in the rental market because they look so good.
Awesome. Now, do you have a crew that works for you to do that, or are you just like all subbing out everyone to do this?
No, one of my life goals is to never have an employee again. So no, it's all subbed out stuff. So we've got some guys that we've used for a long period of time. So whenever we have a project going, we will typically use them. Got a bunch of Brazilian guys in New Orleans that I've used for years. Great guys, and they do good work, and they kind of know how picky I am about things. So
yeah. And so you're doing that virtually from Florida now. Yep.
Yeah, all the New Orleans stuff is from Florida. I live in the Panhandle, so I'm only 4.5 hours away, so I can drive there. I can leave in the morning and be there at noon if I need to be. And then all the stuff here in Florida is very close to my house, within a mile or so. Some short-term rentals here. I own some more lots here that I'm going to build some short-term rentals. I'm very bullish on this part of Florida. I'm bullish on Florida in general, but especially this part. It's just an amazing place to live. Our beaches are amazing. People are super nice. There's zero crime. It's a great place to raise a family.
Yeah, that part of Florida is great. I've been to Destin a few times. And I've
Oh, nice.
Oh,
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, we're about 15 miles east of
Destin.
Destin.
What's the town that's there? Okay.
So it's called Santa Rosa Beach. It's between. Have you ever heard of the little community called Seaside or Rosemary Beach? It's around those. So it's like it's equidistant between Destin and Panama City.
Down there. I love it. Although last time Dan and I went down there for a conference last November, dude, and it was freaking cold.
I came in shorts and a tank top, and I was like, dude, this is cold.
It was like windy and 50 degrees. Yeah. It was horrible.
Yeah, people think just because it's Florida that it's gonna, we're gonna have warm water in the wintertime, but like you're not going in the water in January and February here. The water will be freezing, and if we get a cold front through, the weather can be cold too. I mean, typically in January the average high is probably 58. It doesn't really get that cold, but I mean, it can get really cold. So
jacket, because I brought like clothes like I was going to Hawaii because I had no idea what the hell I was doing.
Yeah, I mean, my wife put on the heat this morning, and I think it was like 58 degrees this morning, which is cold for here. And she had the heat on. If it was up to me, I would never.
That's funny. So that's cool. So you're doing all that virtually over in New Orleans. So I guess what does that system look like for you? I mean, obviously you're doing new builds. I know this is something that Dan has a really big interest in, especially because we've gotten a lot of lot stuff recently here in Spokane. And the new build process, I mean, one problem is we're in Washington State where the wages are just outrageous.
Real high.
You pay $18.50 for a burger flipper right now. But that whole process of doing it with just subs and like systematizing that, like, do you kind of have like a key operator that keeps all your people on track, or are you actually the one that's cracking the whip on all these guys?
Yeah, well, I own some properties with a buddy of mine, so we kind of team up, and like I said, the guys we've used before, they know how we operate, and they know they're not going to be able to cut corners with us. So we've kind of got that down. We use a lot of video pictures with the iPhone and stuff. And for the rentals, I'd love to say I have all these fancy systems, but what I've recently been doing is, I just put ads on Zillow. And then I don't show the apartment until they're ready to sign the lease and give the deposit. So what I do is I get the existing tenant to do a walk around video of the unit with their iPhone. Just ask them to walk through the unit, do a video walkthrough with their iPhone. They upload that to my Dropbox, and then I put that on YouTube. And then I just send the YouTube link to prospective tenants. So the tenants have, I tell them to drive by the property so they can look at the neighborhood and look at the outside. I give them the video walkthrough to look at. And, a lot of them ask to see the apartment. I'm like, I'm just honest with them. I'm like, hey, I'm not going to show it to you until you see the video walkthrough, drive by, and then you tell me you're ready to see the lease, sign the lease. I go, I'm not going to accept money from you until you walk through it. So I'm not trying to scam you. But until you tell me you're ready to sign the lease and pay the deposit, I'm not getting you in that unit. And people are cool with it. I think it's from COVID. People are just kind of used to that. And I don't have any problems with it. So, originally I was going to maybe hire a property manager when I moved here, but I don't trust anybody with my properties. Like I said, I don't like to give up that control, and I just don't want to pay 10% to somebody that's going to do a bad job.
Yeah, man, I didn't realize you self-manage.
It's worked out well.
I mean, we can't even manage that locally here. I think part of it, trust me, I'm wrong, but there's probably a bit of a rental culture down there. Like a lot of people are lifelong renters in southern states, or so I've heard.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
And we have pretty nice units. I mean, we have 50 something units in New Orleans, and they're all in really nice duplexes. Average rents, typically $1,300 to $2,000 a month. So they're nicer places. We're not doing Section 8, we're not doing low income stuff, which we've done before.
Gotcha.
We just had a really bad experience. So life's too short, in my opinion, to do stuff like that. So the people we deal with are usually, white collar people, educated. They, they're used to the technology.
Yeah, I think that's
stuff.
a cultural difference because here, Eastern Washington, you don't find a lot of lifelong renters unless they have problems.
Yeah, unless they come with problems. Yeah.
Yeah, or they've gotten divorced and they have child payments, but they're like, a good person besides that. Like, that's fine. But we got like a lot of the tenants that we get up here are low income, criminals. Like, what other weird stuff do we have, Dan? Like, most of the tenants that we have that are good, they're super temporary because they're looking to get into a house as quickly as possible. Whether they're younger people or they're white collar and they just moved here or whatever.
It doesn't mean like our tenants are necessarily bad, but it's just a little bit harder to manage sometimes. But the difference is, it sounds like, Kurt, as well, is you're pretty niche down. Like you said, I'm doing duplexes. You're probably, especially if they're the new builds, you've got the same floor, the same footprint. I really liked your strategy here, because like this weekend, even I've got quite a few different showings I got to do that I'm trying to figure out how to get out of, so I don't have to do them. And I definitely obviously do the Zillow, the photos and all that sort of stuff, and vet them as best as possible within our legal rights. But the video walkthrough is key. Yeah. I think that's an important one, so that you're not wasting your time walking through with 3 or 4 people.
Yeah, and then eventually I'm probably going to do like a professional video walkthrough with a professional photographer and all that stuff. But typically when you're doing that, it's not even furnished, so it's sometimes better just to say, hey, this is what it looks like right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what it looks like with my tenants' furniture and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And it just eliminates all the tire kickers. You get so many tire kickers. It's crazy how many people will email me from Zillow, and I'll respond to them, and they just don't respond.
Right.
Like, ever. Like, I'm like, why did you even send me an email? Like, if you're just not going to respond, there's so many tire kickers out there, and it's that this way gets rid of all the tire kickers.
Enough for us to want to find a property manager, because like we would post a property on Facebook and we would literally have 50 people message about it.
We get hundreds of inquiries
in the first day. It was ridiculous. Yeah. And like exactly, all tire kickers, like they're not even remotely qualified for the unit. Like when I used to do it, I would have a copy and paste of like, here's the basic qualifications. If you don't meet any of these, then don't bother applying more. Yeah. And I would just send those to everyone, and I would it'd go from like 100 to like 7. From 7, you would have one that would actually show up.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it was always challenging. No, nice. That's awesome. So you've built, grew your portfolio, you're doing the new builds. Have you done any, as pretty much everything that you've done held for the most part? Like, I guess now, are you still actually doing any flips or any transactional sort of stuff? Or are you just trying to build this empire?
So right now we're not really investing much in New Orleans right now, unless let's just see a steal. Not too bullish on the city right now. Yeah. It's just, it's run like a banana republic down there, and the crime's out of control. It's like it's the murder capital of the country right now. It's still a great rental market. You'd be surprised how much money you can get for rentals. And it's sad because it really is a great city, and what it could, the potential, because it's just such a cultural town. It's got an awesome history. It's got, it's so much fun for you to go visit. But the quality of life to live there, like if you're married with kids, it's just not a great quality of life with you're married with kids. When you're young and single, quality of life's great. You're partying all the time and stuff. And I did that. I'm kind of over it. And that was one of the reasons we moved. And so this really stuff I'm concentrating on now is building my Airbnb portfolio here in Florida. I have one in Colorado as well, but I really want to concentrate here at the beach. I really like the business. It's the guests you have. They're great people. They're always happy, having fun. And I think I'm going to see a lot of capital appreciation, as well as good cash flow. I was lucky. I'd love to say I predicted it, but I was lucky that I bought most of the stuff that I have here before COVID.
I bet.
So there was a huge run up after COVID. So all of my stuff here.
So you talk about managing your personal or your long-term rentals. So do you self-manage the short terms as well? And how do you balance that, if so?
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing. I don't trust anybody else to manage my property. So yes, I'm actually probably too hands-on with my short-term rentals here. Like I have one tiny house, which is 750 square feet. Yeah. It's actually the best investment I've ever made.
No way.
And, I actually clean it myself.
Come on, man. That's not even expensive.
Yeah, I do that because No, it makes zero sense. But like I said, I'm retired. I like to get my hands dirty sometimes. But it's a block away. It takes me 90 minutes. I make $215. I check on the house. I check all the supplies, and it kind of gets me out of the house. If my kids are driving me crazy or something, and it gives me a couple hours. I just put on my headphones.
That's
and
awesome.
listen to podcasts.
I'm just imagining you with like a little duster and like a little apron on in there. That's great.
Yeah, my average like rental over there is typically just like a 3-night stay. So it's I'm probably making like over 20 grand.
That's awesome. Dude, that's really cool. And yeah, if you like doing it, nobody's telling you shouldn't do it, Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't mind doing it. I mean, I'm not going to do it eventually, but it's something I do right now. But so yeah, I'm very hands on. I have another short term rental 2 doors over. We've got a couple more, so they. I like dealing with it. I'll go fix something if something comes up. I'm not like a plumber or electrician or air conditioner guy. I'm not that hands on, but those things I sub out. But I don't trust the property manager. That's like the house across the street from me. The guy rents it. Their property manager sucks, and I know they're charging them a ton of money. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm keeping that money in house. Some of these people charge 20 to 30%, and I think they under rent the place. I don't think they even charge the proper amount. I have a friend he's like, man, I'm all booked up for the next 3 months. I'm like, that's bad. That means your property manager under rented your place.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I never thought of it like that. I'm like, yeah, let me see your rates. And his rates were like 40% lower than what it could have been. So, it's like anything in life. Nobody's going to watch your stuff like you are. Nobody's going to take care of your kids like you are. Nobody's going to take care of your property like you are.
Yeah, awesome. So, I mean, you're doing it all, right? Like, I love it. Like, and those are things that I'm sitting here thinking, Dana, we got to take some notes from you because I definitely trust people with a lot of shit. But I guess we do say with our active business does take a lot of time, and realistically, our rental income is dwarfed by what we do with our wholesaling. But
it is. But we also aren't happy with anybody we ever pay to do things. We're like, God damn it, we're paying them to do that.
I know, and it always sucks every time.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. You got to find good people, and you got to
so true.
Kiss a lot of frogs before you find the good people, and then when in construction, when you find a good person,
that's so true.
He might only be a good person for 2 years because then he might realize like, hey, I can charge double, or I can
have a drinking problem now.
So
yeah.
Yeah, just because they're good now doesn't mean they're going to be good a year or two from
like
now,
when I first started flipping houses by myself before I partnered up with Dan, and I had this guy, it was him and his son that I used for several projects, and they were great. Like him and his son would show up, they did good craftsmanship, they were affordable. I mean, they were like a little bit expensive, but they weren't like outrageous. And then Dan and I bought our first house together, and we plugged him into it thinking it was going to be the same. Charge the same amount of rate that we were expecting, but all of a sudden we have his like his employees that are fresh out of jail that are there like smoking ciggies in the house, like they're not doing anything, but he's still charging us the rate for him and his son, and we're like, come on, bro. And there's just so much bullshit that went on. And I'm like, you're burning the whole relationship. Like, we'll give you enough business that you don't need another client for like the next like several years, but over that, it just fucked up the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, I tell people all the time, especially around here, everybody shops builders and all this kind of stuff. And I tell them, on most of your house, at the end of the day, the person doing the work, putting the nail in the wood, is a dude from, Nicaragua or Honduras. And, you got to watch them. They might have just got here 2 weeks ago. They're not trained. They don't speak English. I speak Spanish, so that's fine with me. But you got to watch everybody. You got to watch the watchers. You got to watch the contractor. The contractor's got to watch his foreman. Yeah. The foreman's got to watch the guy doing the work. And if all those people aren't doing their job properly,
you're so right. And I always think it's funny. I hear this a lot with people that are, I would say, like, new to this business. They're like, yeah, you just find like the Hispanic guy and he'll like have his brother and stuff that do everything. And, you know, it's just so great. And in my mind, that's the most like accidental racist thing. Cause you're just assuming that all the Mexicans that show up are going to be good at all the work, and they're not back checking them at all.
Yeah,
because like we've literally experienced this where we've had a GC, he was a Mexican guy, and he was fine. But then all of a sudden he brings like his brother. He's like, oh, my brother does drywall. And you go up and you're like, your brother has never hung drywall in his life. What are you talking about right now? And it was so obvious the guy had no idea what the hell he was doing, but he was just going on, you guys are white and you guys just are going to believe that we all know how to fix houses. Like, I'm
not
just
true.
Like, it's just like everything else.
That's funny. That reminds me of a story I was trying to compliment an Indian friend of mine, and I was like, man, y'all are like all really smart. Come here, you get, all doctors and engineers, and I mean, y'all are just really smart people. He's like, dude, in India, there are so many dumb people.
Yeah.
He goes, all the smart ones just come to the United States.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's funny. We have
a
guy on staff who lives in India. He's a virtual employee, and he's literally said the exact same thing. And it's like, he's like, everyone has these views of what it's like here. He's like, it's not. I mean, it's just like everywhere else. There's people that are top of the totem pole, bottom of the totem pole, and the people that are up top, they seek those opportunities to make their lives better. They develop skills, they do everything else. And just because someone comes from a certain nationality or certain demographic doesn't mean that they're magically good at it. Just because, it's what it was on all the movies or whatever.
That's funny.
No.
It's like the Seinfeld quote. Somebody in Seinfeld, one of the episodes, I think Elaine goes, Jerry, isn't that a little racist? He's like, it's not racist if I like this.
There you go. I have to quote that one.
Yeah, right.
All right.
I love it. Yeah, exactly.
Right. White guys, this is going to get flagged.
We didn't say anything bad. It's all true. Anyway, awesome, Kurt. So I guess, what does your total portfolio look like now?
Wow. So 50-something units in New Orleans, and then 4 active short-term rentals, and then 3 more lots I've got to develop here. And then I'm a limited partner on some apartment complexes in San Antonio, one in Fort Walton Beach, and then a couple other like development projects that I'm a limited partner on, one in Austin, one in that's out of Tampa. So I do some like syndication investments and stuff like that as well. I'm trying to become a little bit more passive on things as life moves me forward. But right now I'm trying to hold some capital. I'm building a new house for my family and I, and then I think it's just kind of a touchy time to invest in some syndication stuff with the cost of capital going up.
Awesome. So we'll go into the final section here. We always have a few questions that we like to ask. So first off, I'm excited for this. I'm sure you have.
I'm so excited.
But what is your craziest real estate investing story? And it can be a positive story. It can be a negative story. Like, one of our go-tos is we had a seller that was abducted from a closing once. We've had people talk about big wins that they've had. What's your craziest real estate story?
Oh, exciting.
So I'll tell a negative and a positive one. So just to keep it a little positive. So my negative one was we found a dead body in a porta potty in front of a duplex we were building. That was 2 years ago. The guy, we didn't know the guy. He went in there,
died.
I think he was doing heroin or something, and he OD'd. So we found a dead body in there.
I was going to ask, did he die in there, or did you find a body that was placed in there? Because they're 2 very different stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I think he OD'd.
Heroin. He OD'd.
I know.
So
I know. It's like Dan. That's like Dan used to jerk off in porta potties.
Yeah.
You can't put that shit.
Dude, New Orleans is crazy, man. I've had to pull my gun 4 times in New Orleans on people. Like New Orleans is nuts. My positive story is on one project, the framers that were out there. I think they were all from like Nicaragua or something. One of the guys was missing a leg, and he was framing a house. And I was just like, man, that is like really inspiring. First of all, the guy walked across the border without a leg and somehow got to New Orleans, and he's working on a job site without a leg, framing a house. I just thought that is the coolest thing ever. And the fact that we have so many people in this country that, you know, if they break a nail, they're not going to work the next day. And this dude's missing a leg. He's walking around with like his crutches, and he didn't have a prosthetic.
After that is crazy. Holy smokes.
I know.
Nuts. And he wasn't a slacker. Like
That's
he was
insane.
like,
I know here someone twist an
rolling.
ankle and then they like go, oh, I have arthritis now. I need disability.
I got to get L&I.
Yeah, right.
Pretty much.
Disability.
What you don't know about that guy though is, you know, he probably, you know, lost his leg while framing a house, like, you know, a wall fell on him or something.
He sawed it off on accident.
He's just trying to get back into his roots, man. That's all he knows.
Jesus.
Yeah, he had a giant, giant piece of lumber.
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
That was terrible.
Oh man, we're off the deep end. Cool. Those are both solid. All right. So what was a number one piece of advice you would give to an investor that's either looking to get started or to take their investing in business to the next level?
Two pieces of advice. Do is just read. You know, I read or listen to audiobooks or podcasts. I'd say 4 hours a day.
Wow.
And then also you got to do your first deal. If you haven't done a deal yet, you just got to get out there and do a deal. Even if you don't make money, even if you lose a little money, you just have to do it. You just got to build, you know, that muscle memory and just do a deal. So just get off the sidelines and just do it, because you can procrastinate, you know, forever before doing your first deal. And I know it's scary,
so
but you just got to get out.
Can't be stated enough. That's a big thing we always say to our people in our instant investor program too, is, you know, even though everyone always wants their first one to be a slam dunk, they all know that investor that made like $100,000 on their first deal. That's not the way that it goes. Mm-hmm. You know, you kind of just got to jump into it. Like, make sure you're not going to lose your ass.
Right.
But if you go through this whole thing and you spend 6 months and you make like no money or you lose a little bit, that education is going to be a lot more valuable.
Much more valuable
than, you know, not doing anything at all.
Yep. Yeah. First house I ever bought.
Yeah.
I had to replace the roof like a month later, and I had no money and I didn't know what to do. And it was New Orleans. It's raining like crazy and water is getting in. I was freaking out, but you know what? You just, now you just roll with the punches. Like, I've had property for so long. I've had everything happen. So I don't even get upset when something happens. Oh, the roof flew off. The roof, you know, got blown off in a storm. Yeah, like, okay,
exactly.
whatever.
I mean, you're completely right. That's how I knew I was a seasoned investor. Was we had a oil furnace that leaked like all over.
That was fun.
Yeah, leaked all over one of our properties that we had just renovated. It was literally like a month after being renovated, and we had it on Airbnb, and I got the like Airbnb notification, and it was from a guest, and it said, "Your whole house smells like propane. I'm checking into a hotel." This was like 10:30 at night. And I go, I guess we'll deal with that tomorrow. I just went to bed.
Yeah. You're in the game long enough. Things it's going to happen. Murphy's Law comes in play all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So awesome. Well, thanks so much, Kurt. If anyone did want to connect with you, I know you don't have anything to plug, but do you have a way people can reach out to you or follow along and see what you're doing?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the easiest, at Kurt BUC, at KURT BUC.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, thanks, Kurt. And yeah, if anybody has any deals that are in New Orleans or in Florida that you might want to be moving, Kurt could be a very strong buyer. I know we do actually have quite a few listeners in those areas because I can see the metrics where they're from. So seriously, guys, you should follow Kurt, hit him up. Besides that, guys, thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
See you.
Thanks for listening. Please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out at collectingkeyspodcast.com for tips and guides on starting your own real estate investment and wholesaling business.